Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Tyzer Evans. Tyzer, welcome.
Thanks, Thomas. Happy to be here.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my name's Tyzer Evans. Stoked to be talking to everybody today. I'm a California native who ended up in Houston, Texas. Been in insurance sales for a long time. Also do some sales consulting, also run a podcast. Also, every once in a while, she lets me help my wife run her business. She's an entrepreneur. We've got a couple kids, 2 young boys and 3 dogs, and we stay busy.
Well, I was going to talk to you about sales today because, that was what's planned. But then I checked out the YouTube channel and there's just loads of people that we both follow. So, you got your book reviews, which I thought were cool.
Yeah,
there's Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Darren Hardy, and Jocko Willink. What's your approach and what's your background to self-development?
I was late in the game. I've always been a reader, and some of it's pushed myself and been driven. But when I got into my 30s, I think it was when I had my first son. I was 30, and I needed to find another gear. I started making really good money pretty young at 25, a couple of years out of college, and I still felt like I was kind of stuck. And so I started. I forget who introduced me to my first book that I think it was my aunt. She introduced me to Napoleon Hill. And so I read, Think and Grow Rich. And then that kind of spurred me to get into some other books and personal development. And then just hopped on YouTube and started following people like you see my 10X hat, like Cardone. And it kind of spun from there where I was like, wow, there's a whole nother gear that I need to tap into. And these people, success leaves clues. And so I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I'm never going to be able to talk to these guys, maybe one day, but, not right now. So, but they've got, YouTube and books, and I can learn and absorb, and they can be mentors from afar for me.
You got any favorites?
Yeah, for sure. I would say I follow Grant's material, the closest, Grant Cardone. I really just bought in. I think, the only thing that people have to be wary of is that when you get too hardcore into personal development, you can, get a lot of conflicting messages, and it makes you feel, a little more confused. So I really try to stick to a couple people where I really follow and buy into their way of doing things, and Grant's one of them. I'm an investor in Cardone Capital. I've been to the 10X Growth Cons. I've done his boot camps. Ed Milet's another one that I follow really closely, being another California guy, and it's really impressive. We have some synergies with the type of industries we've been into. But I love following Les Brown too. I love his message, just so positive. So those are, probably the 3 guys I follow the most. And Brad Lee recently is a guy that I've been really into listening to.
Okay. And what would you say are top things that you have learned from Grant Cardone?
That, it's to not be scared of making a lot of money and scared of wealth. I grew up lower middle class. And, the term that was used in my house a lot was we're financially embarrassed. And so, a lot of us have really bad relationships with money. And
because you had a lot or because you had a little?
Because we had a little.
Okay.
And so it was just coming from this total scarcity type of mindset. And, always being concerned about how much is in my account, being concerned to how much dinner is going to cost, how much my car is going to cost, how much I put in my gas tank, always being obsessed and worried about money doesn't attract money. And so Grant, his way of thinking about money was like, hey, you're being selfish by not wanting to go out and make a lot, because if you don't make a lot, then you can't help people and you can't serve people. And so that really helped me kind of reframe my relationship with money. The 10X mentality of not just 10Xing your efforts at work, but my relationship with my wife, the relationship with my children, with my parents, with my spirituality, with myself. So I really like that. And Zig talks about that, hitting the core pillars of life and having goals aligned with them. Having goals that are so big, you have to grow into them. I used to set goals I knew I could achieve, and they were super unfulfilling. And it kind of always made me feel stuck. So now I place goals out there that seem like they'll be impossible to hit because it forces me to level up my skill set.
In order to 10X.
There you go.
So are you happy to share your goals at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I write down my big goals every morning. I've got a little 10x planner here, so I'll read them to you. So currently one of my goals is to become vice president of sales, to be worth $10 million by the time I'm 45, to run a globally known podcast where I get to over 1 million downloads, to get that back down to 185, my college weight. COVID hasn't been kind to me.
Hasn't been kind to many, right?
Yeah, right. And then to own a large real estate portfolio of 500 doors. And so those are the goals I write down every day, and then I set up my targets to associate with those goals.
And how are you getting on with them?
I'm getting as far as how am I tracking?
Well, I guess it depends on how new they are, I suppose, but how would you feel like your progress is?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm right there as far as the top one with a couple of different promotions. I've been involved in a lot of activities with our company that has kind of elevated me and put me into a spotlight. I do a lot more than is required or asked of me. So I'm very confident this year that the promotion will happen. Very close to now at 36 seven-figure net worth. So that should help to escalate, right, the compound interest of all of my investments. I'm very disciplined with how I allocate my money. Podcast is going good. It's growing. I think it hit 64 different countries, which is global. Downloads are looking a lot better. We've been able to 10x that the last year. I'm down to 205, so I got 20 more pounds. And I put money in Cardone Capital, and I've had a call last week, and I have another call today about some real estate properties in California.
Almost feel like an applause is due after that.
Yeah, thank you, man. I write them down every day because it's important. So it just reminds me of my mission and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Good. The interesting thing for me, anyway, is the podcast stuff. How long have you been doing that for? And what would you say is you said you 10x'd it. What would you say is the main reason for the growth?
So yeah, I've been doing it 3 years, and I just did it to be pretty much altruistic. I figured out how to make a good amount of money in sales, and I've noticed that managing hundreds of salespeople and mentoring a lot of salespeople and being around them, a lot of people just struggle. 95% of salespeople, unfortunately, are just not very good. And so I wanted to give back. And so I just put it out there, the podcast, I just put it out there, and I was like, hey, man, whoever listens, And it was just kind of like, they find me. If they don't, they don't. And then I kind of said, well, what's the point of putting out the effort if I'm not going to intentionally try to find the right type of people? You know what I mean? It was kind of short-sighted. So then it was just being more intentional about mentioning it on social media, running promotions, building a website out where the podcast is included, driving traffic to it, getting a chance to speak to other audiences like this, which is really great for exposure. So just, being more tactical about my approach with getting my name out there more.
Okay. And it's a good time to ask you about the sales because you mentioned it. You said that 95% of people struggle with sales. What do you think that they're doing wrong? What's the main thing that people tend to get wrong about sales?
Well, they come into sales with a limiting belief system, like I was talking about, so they're already in a bad position when they start. A lot of people that take a sales job, the company they work for doesn't provide adequate sales training. So they kind of come in and they go, hey, here's your product, and I hit the phones. And people, they don't take it upon themselves outside of work to go and develop new skills, which is, you gotta have a classroom outside of work. Because, if you're not getting the help you need from management or your senior leadership, then you got to go find it, right? That's, the part I love about, you mentioned Jocko, is extreme ownership. You have to own your craft. Not a lot of people want to invest the time in doing that. A lot of people struggle with confidence. If you're not confident in what you're selling, it's very hard to exude that confidence and your conviction to other people. And then lastly, people don't have a game plan. They don't have a formula. So, the average sales rep follows up less than 3 times. And statistically, to reach a prospect for the first time, you're going to need to make 5 to 12 cold calls or emails or outreaches. And then to close your first deal, you're going to need to have another 5 to 8 times that you follow up. So you could be 20 contacts in before you ever close a deal, and most sales reps aren't following up more than 3 times.
Okay. Well, the next question, of course, normally is what are the 3 main things you'd recommend people do? And that's one of them, right? So follow up. Is there something else that you would advise someone do if they're in a sales position?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to start to understand your metrics. If you don't understand your metrics, you have no way of holding yourself accountable. So, what I'm really big on is, I always say numbers don't lie, right? They just don't lie. So you have to understand your conversion or your closing ratio, right? You have to understand your sales process. So what we do is, like in our sales process, there's kind of 4 parts to it. So I break down every part and I show my guys their conversion ratio. How many calls does it take you to get what we call an RFP, a request for a proposal? And then we look at the other steps involved and we go, okay, well, it takes you 37 calls to get one RFP, right? And we know your end goal is to write X amount of policies. So we start at the back end. How many policies do you want to write this month? Because that'll be tied to your money, right? I want to make X amount of money. Then we break that out. How many policies that equate? Well, once you have the policy number, then you understand your conversion ratios and you go, okay, well, to write X amount, I need to have X amount of demos from X amount of RFPs and X amount of RFPs from calls. So once you back your way into it, you realize, okay, well, to get one RFP, I got to make 37 calls. I need statistically to have at least 85 RFPs this month in order to hit the 35 demos. And out of the 35 demos, it's going to close the 8 policies I need to hit my income goal. So a lot of reps aren't cognizant of this process. And so they kind of just shoot from the hip thinking they're doing enough. But once you have the numbers broke out, it gives you're in control of your own destiny. You want a 10% raise, you do 10% more calls, right? And that's where a lot of people go wrong, is not understanding their metrics. And then secondly, they don't hold themselves accountable.
Great answer. I don't know much about Grant. I haven't done much of his content, but my interpretation of because I follow some other people and obviously he goes on their podcast, for example. My interpretation of it is he's a volume guy. So you were quite scientific about your approach, but do you agree with that? My understanding is that he's just massive volume in everything he's doing.
Yeah, hit one of his great sayings that I love too is your problem is obscurity in sales, right? It's just like your problem is that nobody knows you. So we definitely take the approach. My office last year in COVID, we grew 65%. We increased our revenue 8 figures. And the way that we were able to do that in the middle of a pandemic was that we have, that term omnipresent. My guys were just anywhere and everywhere. And we just did. We 10x'd our volume. A lot of people retracted and retreated. I said, hey, we've still got a job to do. I'm not going to decrease our goal. We're just going to increase our efforts and double down. So yeah, absolutely. But understanding the baseline metrics, it gives you a starting point with where you want to accomplish.
Well, you mentioned having big goals, and I've spoken to a couple of people about the idea of, it can be quite, you can deter you from meeting your goals if you don't break them down. So you've got your big goal, but you've also got the small steps in order to get there, right?
Correct. Yeah, you got to draw yourself a roadmap, or it'll be very frustrating. So
what's your company is insurance? Is that right?
Yep. So I work for a Fortune 100 company. Yep. Insurance.
Okay. And you enjoy that?
Yeah, man. It's the thing about insurance. It's not sexy. It's not very fun, but it's pretty interesting. You got to stay up to date on legislation, competition. It's probably maybe outside of tech, the most competitive market in the country. I think there's more dollars spent on insurance advertising than any other industry in the United States. So it's wildly competitive, and you learn something new every day, which I enjoy.
Good. And your podcast, let's say it does get to, do you say it was 1 million subscribers? Downloads.
Yeah.
What happens then?
Go to 10 million.
It doesn't allow you to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that at that, when you get to certain levels, as you know, you can start to monetize it if that's your thing, if you want to do that. There's another income stream. I try to look at, especially with wanting to build a real estate portfolio, that's to have passive income. My goal is to be completely, I mean, I would say in the sense I'm already financially free, but, when I'm 55, I want to be like checked out if I want to be checked out. I don't want to have to work. And so I look at different ways. I love to be, hey, the money I make from podcasting just goes right into real estate and that pays all my bills every month. So I don't know. I just think that one, the more people are listening, the more of an impact I'm having and the more I'm giving back to others. And if that turns into opportunities by way of other career paths or monetizing the podcast, then cool. Yeah, I'm open for anything.
That's actually a really good way to look at it, because if you go into it just thinking about the value for the other person, then I would imagine it's much more sustainable that way.
That's what it's been, man. It's been 3 years of me learning how to edit and make YouTube videos and thumbnails and all for free, and I love getting messages back with DMs or people sending me emails saying, hey, this really impacted me, or I watch your Instagram stories because it motivates me, it gives me extra drive. That's for me, really, it fills me up, so to speak.
Good. And you mentioned Les Brown a couple of times. I'm a big fan. Anything that you picked up from him that you would share?
He's had to overcome and endure and be resilient. And, he's one of those guys that he never made an excuse why he couldn't accomplish something in his life. Whether that was, becoming a radio DJ, being part of the Congress, being one of the world's best motivational speakers. He's really had an incredible life, but where he started and where he's come is just one of those true stories, especially what he went through, with segregation here back in the 60s and 50s and whatnot. I think he's 75, 76. So he's lived a long life where he's seen a lot. He's had to endure and overcome a lot. And I appreciate those people that don't have a victim mentality. They just own their circumstances and they persevere.
Yeah, it's a good message. I've been thinking about something in relation to sales, and you can tell me whether it's a perception thing or not.
Sure.
My perception of the concept of the salesperson is that people are trying to, marginalize or work a way around having sales and make it completely automated. So whether it's an app or whether it's e-commerce website or whatever it might be, it's kind of trying not to have that person, I think, to the detriment, because if you can't speak to someone, then you're probably going to make less sales as a result of that. Do you see that as a real thing, or is that just a perception issue with me?
No, I think it's true. I think a lot of companies are looking at how can we automate, how can we move faster without necessarily having a sales force, right? How can we set up a funnel? And through that funnel, we go and we film a 10-minute YouTube video that explains the value prop and what you're going to gain from these courses. You drop into the funnel, we'll do, send you 30 emails a day as a nurturing campaign. And all that's right, all that's effective, but at the end of the day, people buy people. And you may sell somebody on your course. You can sell somebody on your product, good, or service by having automated systems. But at the end of the day, I don't think that will ever create loyalty. I think people create loyalty when you can have human-to-human connection. And for me, people aren't buying the insurance. They're buying me. And at the end of the day, when you remove me from the situation, it's very hard to create loyalty with repeat business. I could be totally wrong, but that's just the way I view it.
It reminds me of commoditizing things. So, if everything's a commodity, then you don't really have to work that hard in trying to see how different something is or whatever it might be. Whereas if you've got someone on the other end of the phone, like you say, you've got a relationship with them, then it makes it unique in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think about the USP?
The USP?
Unique selling proposition.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that acronym. Yeah, everyone's got to have a differentiator. That's what I call it, I guess. Um, and it's interesting. I got asked. I was having a podcast with somebody, and they were saying, "Well, how do you differentiate, between like cell phone companies?" I go, "Right, like that's hard. Like you see a lot of companies doing a really bad job of that with their sales force, where they're not doing a good job of doing their homework and clearly identifying their unique value proposition for their sales force. So the sales force goes out into the ethos and they're quote unquote providing value, but the value is no different than the competition that called in 15 minutes before you. So companies need to do a lot better really identifying, and it's, it can be very hard, what your differentiator is, and then you have to lean on that a lot to be able to provide value and insight to the people you're trying to reach.
That's a good point. And the last person I wanted to ask you about, which is we've mentioned somewhat previously, is Jocko. Have you consumed a lot of that content?
Yeah, I've read at least 3 of his books. I can remember off the top of my head.
I didn't know how cool the book was because I listened to it on audio, so I don't buy them like you do. So I looked at the book and I thought that looks so cool. I should probably get that.
Yeah, it's great. I've read Discipline Equals Freedom, Extreme Ownership, and his new one, Leadership Strategy and Tactics. Yeah, and I love it. I listen to his podcast pretty often, and I love listening to his videos on YouTube a lot. A lot of workout content from Jocko. So I feel like we're friends.
Helps with one of those goals, right?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things which I found with self-development is it made, first of all, you said you got into it quite late. First of all, there was loads of things which are just, just so profound. Like, this book is amazing. I've learned so much. But as you get onward and onward, as you get more informed about self-development information, you pick up less and less. So it's like a diminishing returns type thing. Have you found that at all when you're devouring self-development information?
I try to be very cognizant of looking at books that are in areas that I haven't read on. So I try to have a broad spectrum of what I read. And a lot of times too, like you have like your self-development gurus, like the ones we've kind of talked about. But I like reading books that, on spirituality too, that will give me a different perspective on self-development, like Sadhguru. I've read his book, Inner Engineering, which was one that really stuck with me last year. I like reading Marianne Williamson and listening to her talks on The Course of Miracles. So I think that, yeah, it can, if you're listening to a lot of the guys that have the same messages in a different way, you're not really picking up anything different. So I try to look for different outlets, the people that wouldn't be in that same wheelhouse to continue to do some work.
That's a good point. I wanted to ask you something about, you said that growing up, you had a mindset issue around money. Did you find that went away incrementally, or was it something that you picked up from a book and it just, snapped out of it in a way?
No, definitely incrementally. For me, the more I've made and I've started to scale up, it kind of like chips away at it, where I'm like, hey, I am worth this. I am worth this. I am worth this. And even, it's interesting. We're redoing my backyard right now. And my wife and I grew up very different. Her dad is a serial entrepreneur and wildly successful. And she grew up pretty wealthy. And so we come from different mindsets, right? So my wife's like, oh yeah, 30 grand for the backyard, no problem. And I'm like, holy shit, $30,000 for the backyard. Like, oh my God. You're like, no, I could buy a car for that, and so, and my wife's like, what do you mean? It's like not that much money. It's not a big deal. Like, and I was having a real hard time, like conceptualizing spending that type of money in my backyard, although it makes really no difference to us and impacts our life in no way. And so that to me was like my old story coming up again. Right. And I had to really sit with that and go, man, why is this making you feel insecure, dude? Like, where is this coming from? And then kind of like work through that, for myself.
Well, because you were in that position when you were younger, does it make you think about philanthropy a lot, because I kind of feel like some people do have that where they're like, I know how it feels to be in this position, and now that I've done well, I'm in the position to do things for other people. It makes me think of Tony Robbins, which have you done much Tony Robbins?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. One of the more life-changing books about money that I read was Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. I mean, it was, man, it's like a financial Bible. And I love listening to his stuff. I haven't attended any of his events, but I really want to.
Okay. Because he does this whole, every year he feeds however many millions of people or something like that. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I definitely am right there with you. I've always been, what do they call that? A pledge giver with United Way. I've done that several times over the last 10 years. Currently, the two things I donate to monthly are the Doctors Without Borders, and then the Underground Railway, which is to help children that are trafficking or being trafficked. I'm really passionate about that. If you follow me on Instagram or social media, you see I post about that, talk about that often. And just, being a father of two small boys, it rips my heart out of my chest to know that 85% of the kids that are trafficked across the world done by their parents. And a lot of it's happening in our own backyard and people aren't aware of it. Those are two causes. It's give to third world countries where people can't just get clean water or basic, medical care. So I give money to that, and then to help the fight in human trafficking.
Well, you mentioned your Instagram stuff, so we go from a serious topic to I've referred to it as quite a shallow topic, but right. People, you've got a good Instagram following, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. I've been at it for a couple of years.
How did you go about doing that?
Consistency. I mean, I know everybody says it, but it's just really showing up, being consistent. I've taken some courses from people as well about, how to brand yourself appropriately. So if you look at like my Instagram and my YouTube or my Facebook, you'll see very consistent theme of colors and topics. And I try to be as authentic as possible. I'm just always that way. I have a pretty bad potty mouth. Kind of like Gary Vee, and I swear in front of my kids. I'm always myself. And so when I show up on Instagram, I don't care if you don't always like my opinion. And I think that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. Gary Vee's another one that, of course, he's big on, well, I suppose he's big on a lot of social platforms. Have you picked up anything from him? Other than the potty mouth?
Yeah. Yeah, I read his book, Crushing It, and that was very helpful to think about. The biggest thing, right? We mentioned TikTok, right? And that's why I kind of kicked myself in the ass about TikTok because, I took a big takeaway from him is what you have to keep your, that Gretzky quote, don't play where the puck is, play where the puck's going to be. And so always keeping your eye on the ball, of what's evolving, what's coming, where are we going to be looking in 24 months, what's trending out there, and like using TikTok or which I think used to be Musically, like I should have been on that from day one as a land grab, as he calls it, and I didn't, and so that slowed down my progress with making connections with more people on there. So that's a big thing from him is always pay attention to trends and try to hedge that. Like CLUBHOUSE right now, right? Like everybody's raving about CLUBHOUSE, and that I did get on quickly, but I've done a poor job of jumping on there and connecting with people.
Well, the thing with me and TikTok, which I think I probably same as you. So I was thinking at the time, stupid TikTok, why bother with it, all that kind of stuff. And then I did listen to Gary's information, and I thought, you know what? Just because there are people dancing on there, which you're not going to see me dancing on TikTok, doesn't mean that you have to use it that way. So I put out my normal information, so I might cut out a minute from our talk or something, and I'll put it on TikTok. And if people want to consume that information, they can. And if they want to see a video about dancing, then that's not really my audience.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, you can use it for whatever you want, and eventually you're going to find your tribe. 100%.
I haven't heard of CLUBHOUSE though. What's CLUBHOUSE?
So Clubhouse is an application where you basically you get in and there's like these chat rooms where people are speaking live about a certain topic. So like Grant Cardone has like a 10x room, so you can jump in and maybe Grant will be there, or Elena, or Jared, or Brandon Dawson, and they'll be talking about a specific topic. So you've got like it's really kind of creative. You get in and there's just like these different rooms. So there'll be like a marketing room. You may have like they call moderators. So there'll be like 4 people that are like leading the discussion. And then you can jump in and listen to the discussion between all of the moderators. And then they'll open it up for questions. So it's great as a platform because you can jump in there like me. I can get into Cardone's room. And if Grant is taking questions, and I can fire off questions to him right over the platform, which is super cool.
Mm. Are you allowed to use that, or I don't know, in theory, would you want to use that type of content for your channel? So could you take one of those, I don't know, you ask a question and then Grant responds. Could you take that and put that on your YouTube channel?
No, I don't think there's a way to record it. You'd have to probably already, do the iPhone recording ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a way to pull the information off of Clubhouse. So that's the only downfall. Kind of it's just all live. So like, what stays there kind of stays there.
Okay. Well, one of the things, because you mentioned Grant, one of the things that I've seen recently, and I'm not sure it's quite on the same level because it's not really about making connections, but have you seen Cameo yet?
Yeah, so one of the guys on my sales team bought me a Cameo from Grant for my birthday last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Very much then, because he's on there.
Yeah, that was it was pretty cool. It was a 20-second clip of him saying happy birthday, and I wear a little wristband that says no days off, and so he referenced that too, so it was pretty cool.
That is cool. All right, well, have you got anything that you think is valuable that we haven't discussed today that you would like to share?
Always my message to everybody is that so many of us live in a state of fear, and a lot of people, what's holding them back is the fear of the unknown. And I've been through that several times in my life. Even with this job, I was living in Southern California. I was making 6 figures, and my wife owned a business out there, and she was doing great. And we decided we want to move back to the East Coast for a lot of different reasons and get out of California. And I had to start over, like my career. And that was super scary to go from making multiple 6 figures to taking a job where I was paid $47,500. And moving across the country, went from California to Georgia. And I just know for me, and it worked out way, way better than I ever could have imagined. But my message to people is every time you get that gut check where you're like, I can't do that, that's the thing you should do. And if you can lean in and walk into that fear, the reward on the other side is gonna feel incredible and amazing, and it'll continue to level up your life the more you can lean into that fear.
That's a great point. It reminds me, you said gut check. I feel like we've talked about a lot of self-development people. Did you ever see any Greg Plitt? Okay. Well, he's not around anymore, but he was a bodybuilding guy, but he got basically very well known for all his self-development philosophy. So if you're ever looking for any, I don't know, inspiration or someone new to listen to, it would be someone old technically, but I'd recommend Greg Plitt. Yeah, no,
I mean, Zig's not relevant. He's not living anymore, and we could still learn from him. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I definitely will check him out.
Okay. Where's the best place for people to find you, Tyzer?
You can head over to my website, tyzerevans.com is a great place to connect with me and content. All of my social media handles are Tyzer Evans, so you can find me on any platform just by my name.
And is it right you do sales coaching or mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've done a little bit with businesses, but mostly with just individuals who reach out to me, and I'll work with them for, usually 90 days and do weekly calls. 30 to 60 minutes. And again, it's just helping them get a game plan in place, understanding their metrics, helping them set up sales sequences, how to leave proper voicemails, those types of things.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on and being a great guest.
Thomas, I appreciate it, man. You've been great to talk to. Great questions. Thank you so much.
That's my pleasure. I'll speak to you soon.